Hey everybody, welcome to the Founders Fire podcast. This is Eric Beck, and today's episode is entitled None of the Above. I'm recording this on November 5th, Election Day here in the U.S., and I can't wait to jump into this one. It is so pertinent, and I'm so excited for how it's going to help folks. Today is for leaders at all levels who truly want to break free from the general feeling of being stuck with choices they don't like. So let me start off today's podcast with a quote from Dietrich Bonhoeffer that I think is the center of the bullseye. It is the characteristic excellence of the strong man that he can bring momentous issues to the fore and make a decision about them. The weak are always forced to decide between alternatives they have not chosen themselves. Man, just like, wow, right? Okay, so much in that we're going to unpack. A lot of stuff we're going to get into, but real quick, a little housekeeping, a quick announcement. We are hosting an Entrepreneur's Master Coaching Jumpstart Weekend coming up in January. It's in the lovely and amazing Destin, Florida. It's on January 23rd through the 26th. Be sure to grab your spot at foundersfire.com. Space is extremely limited. That is not a sales gimmick. It is true. We want to keep these small. So if you want to get in on this, grab your spot. It's going to be our best yet. I'm so excited about this. Our goal is to help you make 2025 the most strategic, simple, and wildly successful year yet. So excited to see you there. Okay, back to the podcast. Today we're going to talk about the nature of free will, choice, the nature of choice, the matrix, and Spartacus. None of the above, the choice to get more choices. Practical wisdom, what the Stoics can teach us about choice, and then finally, money as the ultimate tool for choice, or is it? So with that in mind, let's just dive right into the deep end, the nature of free will. Now, a lot of people think they know about this or they've heard maybe some philosophy, but I want to help us make this practical. Okay, so why does it matter what we think about free will? Aren't we just going to do what we're going to do anyway? Well, yes and no. But the reality is that to be an effective leader, we have to be self-conscious about the mechanisms and methods that we use to navigate life. So you could say, philosophy is just a lot of arguing about nothing, and ultimately you need to dump the garbage. That's true, and that's true in many cases. But it is also the case that if we do not examine the way we think, we will not progress. Okay, have you ever been stuck on a problem, and when you found the solution, you started to realize, you know what, this required a different kind of thinking. The way I was approaching this actually was the problem. Okay, that process, how we engage with our lives, is vital if we're going to see improvement. It's not just tell me a new thing to do, because if you get a new technique, it can work, but likely it won't work unless that technique perfectly matched the situation. Let me give you a martial arts example. There's a lot of ways to get out of a headlock, right? So if you went to a martial arts class and they said, today we're going to teach you how to get out of a headlock, and they simply taught you the mechanics of this one move, okay? That would work great, assuming you practiced it, if you got in that exact situation, meaning if the person grabbed your head exactly that way, you were standing exactly the way you were in class, and they weren't doing anything else. There was no environment around, other people, weapons, the ground wasn't uneven, or all of those things. If everything was exactly the same, then you have a technique that will now work. Far better approach to teach a strategy, because a strategy can be applied to lots of situations to get great results. A technique will only work in one precise situation. So I'm trying to make the case here for strategic thinking. And strategic thinking means we have to examine the way we're approaching something, not just be on the hunt for one single solution. All right. Well, if you've listened to any of our podcasts, you know that's what we're about here, training, not trying. So while we will get to some very practical answers today, I do want you to work out with me. I do want you to sweat a little bit. Let's start to examine how we're thinking. And I want to start with the idea of choice, i.e. free will. All right, so let's do an example that will help kind of crack this door open a little bit in a practical way. What would you say, if we were in a conversation right now, you and me, what would you say 3 of your all-time favorite movies are? What comes to mind? What comes to mind? Maybe you thought of Star Wars. Okay, maybe you thought of Gone with the Wind. Maybe you thought of The Matrix, or you thought of The Godfather, or you thought of Home Alone, or you thought, right, or whatever, Heat, or Collateral, or Mission Impossible. Okay, whatever movies came to your mind when I asked you that question, okay, you didn't do that. So I'm going to poke at free will here for a second, so stay with me. I asked you to set what really amounts to an intention. Hold the intention, the idea, what are 3 of my favorite movies? Okay. And then what your brain did is it presented you with options. And then when you finally made a choice, you didn't do anything like choose from every movie you've ever seen. You made a choice from a menu that your brain created. So how much free will is there? Now, I know some of you are like, oh man, don't bend my brain too deeply. Okay, I can't promise not to, but we got to go here a little bit. You see, you cannot make a choice that you're not aware of. Can you actually choose to do something you don't want to do? Now, you can say, yep, I sure can. I can choose to get up at 5 a.m. and work out. But if you make that choice, isn't it true that you want to? I'm not saying it's not comfortable, and I'm not saying it's not unpleasant. But if you think about it, everything you always choose to do is something you want to do. So could you really choose to do something you do not want to do? And you may say, well, yeah, like running into a burning building, I know I might die, but I'm going to try to save somebody, right? But even then, you want to do that. You want to possibly perish in the service of protecting another person. Think about it. Choosing from amongst all of the options and having a truly free will is probably not what you're going to find when you really look at this. Okay. So again, I'll state that question. Can you choose something that isn't on your menu? Can you choose something you're unaware of? Now, you may say, okay, well, great. You're making me confused and my head is hurting now. What is this about and how does this help, entrepreneurs and leaders live and work better, presumably what the Founders Fire podcast is all about? It really does. It really does. And here's the reason. You see, when we start to recognize that choosing what goes on our menu is the most important choice that sets up a cascade of choices, we start to recognize strategy is more important than technique. Okay? Systems level thinking is more important than individual instantaneous scenario choosing. Okay? The light turns green, I go. Okay, that seems to make sense. But what if my overarching strategy is to arrive safely? So when the light turns green, I don't just go. I actually look around and I see that semi-truck come through on a green. And I take a deep breath and go, wow, if I had actually just acted on the green and not taken a larger picture literally into view, then bad things would have happened. Okay? I'm not saying we don't have choice. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that free will is as a notion that we could make any choice at any time is just the result of not thinking deeply enough. You can't make any choice at any time. Can you choose right now to start speaking in Portuguese? No, not unless you already know how, right? Not unless it's already on your menu. How many situations do we get in with ourself, but our team, or our customers, or vendors, or other people in our life, our family, where we're actually asking them to make a choice that is not on their menu? And as leaders, we have to become aware of what is on our menu and what is on the menu of the people we're relating to, that means we have to think a little deeper. And so that's why I want to crack this door open on choice as it relates to the notion of free will. Now, if you've seen the movie The Matrix, which would have been one of my top 3, especially the first one, or you have read about or seen the movie Spartacus, in both of these movies, we're taught a very powerful lesson about choosing that I want to help us apply in our daily life and in how we navigate the calling that we have. So in the first Matrix, you might recall there's a conversation about how the Matrix was created. And if you haven't seen the movie The Matrix, the very, very short version is all of humanity is asleep and in a dream world called the Matrix. We have been put to sleep there, born into that situation, because our robot overlords have enslaved us as a source of power, essentially turning the human race into a bunch of batteries. And Neo, the main character, has been woken up out of this dream into the real world so that he can then go back into the dream world, the Matrix, and try to set more people free. Just a classic archetypal story of slavery, of awakening, of the hero's journey, of not wanting the assignment. This is like Jonah or Moses, right? Not wanting to do the thing that is being called of them. And then going in, discovering their power, failures, all of the things, all of it's there. All of it's there. It's not totally different from our story of Spartacus in as much as the themes, but it may be the case that Spartacus was a true story. We think that a lot of it was true. Again, not necessarily what was put on the big screen, but that it was the case that Spartacus was a gladiator. And he was fighting for his freedom. And in the process of that, he led a slave revolt. And a handful of gladiators made it into the kitchen area. I think it's at the Colosseum. It could have been at one of the other arenas. But he makes it into the kitchen. They arm themselves with kitchen utensils, start this revolt, escape, and over the next 3 or 4 years, wind up having about 70,000 people join them in this revolt that totally shook the Roman Empire. Now, I'd love to be able to tell you, and then the Roman Empire crumbled and, it was a perfect happy ending. That's not the case. It's not the case. But it is an amazing story of when one person decides that their action has to happen and they put total commitment into that choice, that it gives other people permission to choose as well. And so in the Matrix, this idea of the Matrix being something that holds people captive, part of the unfolding of the philosophy in the Matrix movies is that the only way that prison worked was that at a very near subconscious level, humans still felt like they were choosing. And if you were to take the choosing away, you would take away motivation. And I think that what's happening today on November the 5th, Tuesday, Election Day here in the U.S., is that we are getting to interface with something that is absolutely unique and precious in many ways. Yes, we have the right to vote, which is very, very important, but it really rests on this idea of choice. And again, separating that a little bit from the idea of free will, a lot of people, especially the younger generation, feel like my choice doesn't matter. I don't really have a choice. And you could approach that by saying, look, this is a selfish way to view things, get out there and vote. Why don't you vote? But the reality is that when someone has been a slave or has been subject to a system that tends towards slavery, that's the first thing that goes, is the sense of agency, that my choice would even matter. And you can say, has there ever been an election that came down to one single vote for president, let's say? Probably not. But if you roll back to the election in 2000, the official count that was the difference was about 537 votes. Well, what if 537 people had said, you know what, I think it just won't vote? The election would have gone a different way, right? So the principle, not the technique of casting your vote, but the principle of voting is so very important. How would you ever rob somebody of the clarity of that level of thinking? Well, you tell them that they don't have a choice, really. that voting for the Republican or the Democrat is really the same vote. Or your vote doesn't matter. It's never going to come down to one vote. They're all corrupt. Everything's corrupt. The election is rigged. All of those ideas at its summation are disempowering. They're robbing us. And I have a solution for this. that I'm going to share with you in about 10 seconds. But I want to draw this context of how important choice is, because without choice, there is no hope. Right? Choice is everything. There is no maturity without the real ability to choose. If I can't truly choose something and then really mess up, I will never mature. Okay? There's no real relationship with someone when there is no more choice. Think about your customers. If you're an entrepreneur, okay, they've got to be able to see why it's so valuable to choose your product or service. That active volition of choosing the thing that they believe is going to make life better for them. Okay? That is the crux of everything. So fostering the ability to choose wisely may be one of the most important virtues we could ever set our hand to the task of developing in and growing in. All right, so I promised you a solution. And I'm going to make this very political. I have been fortunate enough this year to advise 2 of the 3 major presidential campaigns in the area of small business, which is obviously my area of expertise, but with the strategy in many ways of what we're talking about. And here's my concerns about all of that. I would say that for the elections that I've been able to vote in, I've not been thrilled with the choices that I've been offered. Okay? And so what inevitably happens is you have to choose amongst people you don't really like. And some people call this choosing the lesser of 2 evils. There's a pragmatic choice there. Some people, typically younger generations, are like, I'm not going to vote for anybody. These people are all idiots. They're just self-promoting, self-righteous idiots that only want to maintain the status quo and stay in power, and they're screwing all of us. And I get it, because that's generally true. But how do we change that? Do we just fold our arms like John Mayer said in his song, and we're just waiting, for our opportunity? There's a lot of truth in that worldview, but it can get clouded over in, well, if I don't have it my way, or it's not just right, I'm not going to participate. Also coming against this idea of, yeah, but none of these choices are any good. How could we solve this? Well, we could get better people, but I think we have a lot of great people. I don't think they often run for office, but there's tons and tons of brilliant people that truly do know how to lead with wisdom and temperance and discipline and focus. They're out there. But we're never going to see them because we keep trying to change the technique. This one issue or this one idea or this one thing and this one vote, and you got to vote D or you got to vote R. I have a solution. Okay, what's the solution? None of the above. We need a choice to get more choices. So do we have free and fair elections? I don't know. I think so. I think generally, I've not seen anyone snatch my ballot out of my hand and change the answer that I wrote in or threaten me or whatever. There are always situations that you could probably point to say, hey, that was terrible, or that was wrong. And that's obviously totally unacceptable. People need to be able to cast their vote, and we need to have a way that is safe and fair and it's free. People can choose what they want to choose. But let's go deeper. Let's go philosophical here. If every person on the ballot is a person I don't want to vote for, can I really make a free choice? Think about it. Can you really? If hamburgers, hot dogs, and French fries are the only thing on your menu, can you choose a wrap? No, you can't. You can't. Think about it. If it's not on your menu, you will never choose it. And the people who control the menu, they are the ones who are shaping the world. We need an option. This is my statement here politically. We need an option on all of our ballots that reads none of the above. And I would propose that if 35% of the vote goes to none of the above, then that group of people are done. Thank you very much. What? How would that work? I don't know. I don't know exactly. And I'm sure there's a lot of practical implications for that I haven't thought through. But just from a purely philosophical standpoint, if we want to empower people, they need to be able to get the choice to get more choices. We don't have that. So we wind up choosing between options that we don't like. Let me go back to the quote from Dietrich Bonhoeffer. It is the characteristic excellence of the strong man that he can bring momentous issues to the fore and make a decision about them. The weak are always forced to decide between alternatives they themselves have not chosen. Let me put a little Eric spin on that one. It's the characteristic excellence of the full potential person, family, business, community, city, state, nation. It is the characteristic excellence of that entity that they can bring momentous issues up front and center and decide about them. But the weak person, family, community, etc., are always forced to decide between alternatives they have not chosen themselves. In other words, they didn't choose the choices. They have to choose from the menu they're given. Who chose the choices? Aha! Now we are talking about real, true strategic thinking, systems level thinking. Okay, all of us have run pretty much to the end of the road of individual, isolated choice level thinking, where I'm making the action in this one situation, this one technique. You know, I'm told to get out of the headlock by tucking my chin and turning my head a certain way, pushing on their arm a certain way. That's great. It might even be quote unquote true, but it's only true in that exact circumstance. And that's what we're running to the end of. We are facing problems that cannot be solved by good technique. They need to be solved by systems level thinking. So the nature of free will is that while we think we could make any choice, I'm hoping today that you're waking up to the idea that that's not the case. You cannot make any choice. You can only make the choices that you are aware of. That just like in the Matrix, a great way to stay stuck in slavery, just like the story of Spartacus, is to stay in that system that keeps you oppressed with the illusion of choice. That's what keeps us stuck. We think we can choose, but we haven't. And Morpheus says this in the Matrix. He says, there's this splinter in your mind driving you mad. Okay, I'm going to paraphrase here. You don't know what it is. You don't really know what it is, but something's wrong. Something's not right. I'd like to explain that something to you right here and now. What is not right is that you're not choosing the choices. You're being handed a menu that you yourself did not put together. None of the above would be a great system level change that would really change our elections. Ranked voting would be great as well too. Choose first, second, third, fourth place. But even more powerful than that is none of the above. None of these people are qualified. None of the above. Do over. Well, that's going to cost them a lot of money. Great. Well, that's going to delay the process. Okay, we can figure that out. But what we can't keep doing is choosing the lesser of two evils and thinking we're going to go anywhere. We've run to the end of that. Now, you may say, could we outsource this somehow? And that is the main problem with AI. My main problem with the AI, whether that's narrow AI or general AI or narrow intelligence or general intelligence, I don't think that a machine will ever become conscious. Why not? Because machines are only going to get great at what their programmers program into them. And layers upon layers upon layers upon systems may be able to fool all of us and pass the Turing test. So that if you had a conversation with this computer, but you didn't know it was a computer, you'd think it was a person. And you'd say, this is a person. And it has a personality, and it has, ethics and morals, and it's exactly like a person. That probably will happen. But will it be actually conscious? Will it be actually able to have an experience of being a being? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Will it become indistinguishable from that? Probably. Okay. So in a certain sense, the problem with AI is that through the use of algorithms and complex systems thinking based on these large language models, we are outsourcing our ability to choose choices. We just go to AI and just say, hey, tell me what about this and this and this and this. And then AI will use those algorithms to put papers together or phrases or marketing ideas or you name it, right? We are on the verge of being in the moment where we let our choosing muscle atrophy because we've been taught it doesn't really matter anyway. We've been that baby elephant tied to the post all these years. And now, even though we are 20 tons or however large an elephant gets, and we could just snap that little post like a twig, we don't. The learned helplessness of technology, what it's imposing on us. I mean, think about it. We're afraid of nature. We're afraid of the wilderness. We're afraid of fire. We're afraid of a fight. We're afraid of everything because we've outsourced all of our survival at such a level of individuation that none of us as generalists really are around anymore. That is a very, very fragile way to live, and it's frankly a very fragile way to think, and it makes us very easily manipulated. So for those of us who would like to follow Spartacus and exit stage left, it's going to start with this kind of thinking. Now, I'm going to land the plane here in a second, but before I do want to get us to the practical side of this, because there is a very, very important action step that we have to take. I'm going to quote here from an article called The Act of Choosing. Actually, the title is Philosophy as the Act of Choosing. It's by Brittany Polate, and I'm sorry, Brittany, if I mispronounced your name. And it comes to us from the website Modern Stoicism. Let me just give you this quote, and then I want us to unpack it. As I've been practicing Stoic philosophy, I've come to realize that Stoicism isn't really about virtue. It's more about using good judgment to seek virtue. I'm not the first person to see things that way. Do you want to know what philosophy promises the human race? Seneca says to Lucilius, good judgment. Virtue doesn't exist in isolation, in some kind of pure form. Sorry, Plato, she says. Although, of course, the concept of virtue can still be a useful one for us, in the world of humanity, virtue resides in virtuous actions, thoughts, and motives. When I think about my own actions, for example, I can't separate my own virtue or lack thereof from the way I think and act. Could I be virtuous if I act viciously? Or could I be actually vicious if I act and think virtuously? I don't see how that's possible, she says. In a very real sense, as Epictetus says, we are our choices. For you yourself are neither flesh nor hair, but choice. And if you render that beautiful, then you yourself will be beautiful. She's quoting Epictetus there. And then the final part of this excerpt. These are strong words. We are not merely the sum of our choices or the product of our choices. We are our faculty of choice. Well, we could probably do 10. That's the end of the quote. We could probably do 10 podcasts on what Brittany has written here. But what I feel like she's bringing to our attention is a deeper understanding of the essence of what it means to choose. And ultimately, for me, I don't look at choice as some sort of a theoretical exercise. I look at choice as something we're doing every single day, all the time. And if we allow our choice faculty, the faculty of choice, okay, to become unconscious or perhaps to stay unconscious, if we do not wake up to the way we are choosing, it doesn't matter how virtuous your choices are. I'm going to give you 3 choices. Choose as virtuously as you can. But what if the best choice is choice number 4 and it's not even on the list? Then you can be worried about your individual virtue in the moment choices all you want. It won't change anything. It won't change anything because the choice that would change something is not even presented to you. You don't even see it as an option. This has implications for our whole society. It has implications for how we educate our kids. It has implications for how we grow our businesses. And I want to tell you that the heart of Founders Fire, the fire part, right? The thing that burns away the dross and leaves what's most pure has to do with our approach to choosing. And a conscious approach means we have to be willing to uncover things that may not really be serving us anymore. We might be very used to them. They may even be normative. Hey, everybody does it, but it's not good enough. Now, I studied debate for a long time, and one of my favorite debates is a famous one from, I believe, 1985. I could be wrong on the timing here, but it's between Dr. Greg Bonson and Dr. Gordon Stein. I highly recommend that you, quote, waste 2 hours. Dig this up on YouTube and listen to this debate. Absolutely stellar. One of the most important things that happens near the beginning of this debate is that one of the 2 debaters asked the other, if your beliefs were shown to be false, would you relinquish them? Let me ask you that question. If what you believe to be absolutely certifiably true 100%, if that thing were shown to actually be false, would you let go of it? This is the mark of an intellectually honest person. If they say, if you or I say, no, I know it's true, it by definition has to be true, you're not really being intellectually honest. Because by definition, if it were shown to not be what you think it is, if you are not the omniscient measure of objectivity, if it's something outside of you, then you have to be open to the possibility that something you believe is true may not be true. And in this particular debate, Greg Bonson answers that question and says, yes, I would. He said, I don't think that my beliefs are not true, but if they were shown to be untrue, yes, I would relinquish them. Fantastic. Because now we are really having a debate about truth and about ideas. Now, money always has to creep into things, and I'm going to bring it in just to land the plane here. Our 5th and final point here is money as the ultimate tool for choice, or is it? You've heard it said in Matthew 6:21. You may not have known it was Matthew, but where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And that verse has been used to explain a lot of things, but to me it just says that money is heart radar. That's what it's saying. Money is heart radar. And if we don't take that objective step outside our own worldview, if we don't examine our own presuppositions and be open to them being false, that question we were just talking about in that debate, okay, would you relinquish that worldview if it were shown to be false? Wow, people are so committed that it can't, I could never do that. Think about our candidates. How many times have candidates been asked about, hey, you said this in, 2019 that you believed ... but now you don't seem to say that anymore. What happened? Why is it the case that our candidates can't just say, yeah, I found out more information about that. I did have that belief, and here's why. But given this new information or this different way of approaching that, I actually think that's not the best approach. And so I then changed my mind. What? Why do they not do that? And why is it seen as such a terrible thing to have changed your position? What, do we want someone to be born and they're like 2 years old and their entire philosophical, political platform is set in stone and it can never be examined or improved or it can never grow? You see, we want both of those. We want people to never change their mind because they've always believed what we believe. So we believe A, and we want to elect someone who believed A their whole life and never believed B and never changed their mind. That is so immature. That's ridiculous. We have got to evolve our thinking past this myopic trap that we get in. Now, obviously, when it comes to money as heart radar, I would say that money is thinking radar because it shines a light on what we value. Money is a tool, yes, for trading goods and services and blah, 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 is very efficient. And we can go into all the theories around money and even the economic side of it, M1, M2, M5, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's great. But for today, I don't want us to go there. For today, I want us to think about money as a revealer of this inner thinking, of this way of processing, of this way of choosing, which ultimately becomes a source of our allegiance, a source of our security. Now, I think the ultimate example of exactly what I'm talking about is none other than Jesus. Why do I say that? Am I proselytizing? No, I'm not proselytizing. The truth doesn't need to be defended. I'm not trying to convince you of anything. I'm telling you what I think. I think that the ultimate tool in the pursuit of the full menu or the fullest menu or a increasingly more diverse menu, okay, a more helpful set of choices than just the 5 primary colors is the larger crayon box, right? And a crayon box even larger than that. That degree of, graduation or the graduated colors from, it's not just black and then it's white. It's gray and there's brown and there's tan and there's all the versions of all the colors. Now we're talking, if you open your eyes, you look at the world you live in, you'll see there's like 1 million greens. Look at a forest, a photo of nature. Look at how many shades of green there are. You see, that's the menu we need to be using to make our choices from, not this A, B, binary, Democrat, Republican, fill in the blank, right? That overly simplistic choosing keeps us trapped in problems we could have solved 100 years ago, probably 1,000 or 2,000 years ago. Now, why do I bring Jesus into this as I'm not Jesus smuggling? I'm trying to make it obvious here. I think because he showed us something absolutely central to freedom, which is the way to expand our ability to choose. And I think many people have pointed to this, not the least of which is Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning. They're pointing to the way to choose to deal with adversity. Now, a lot of people think that the cross as Jesus' final act on earth, even though, some of the story is that he was here for 40 days after that, but his final, culminating moment, getting murdered, tortured to death, and killed on this cross, being falsely accused because the powers that be felt like he was a subversive, which he totally was, right? That the final statement here was the payment for sin. These folks murdered him, and he allowed it to happen because there was a transaction that needed to take place. And while I don't want to argue theology with anybody, I would just offer that maybe there's something else there too. In addition to that idea, there may be also a very, very powerful idea that we should consider. And it is this, that Jesus' example to all of us was to take the absolute worst thing and turn it into the absolute best thing. Think about that for a second. Falsely accused, tortured for the better part of a day, murdered, abandoned. He cries out, my God, why have you forsaken me? Right? Here's a man who is in the worst moment, in a category sort of situation that any person could get in. You're abandoned. You're losing your physical life. You're losing your emotional life, your mental life, your spirit. Every single thing is getting ripped away from you in this moment. And then what happens? He comes back to life. What is the story there? Beyond, again, the transactional, just the theological version of that. What's another version of that story that could be powerful for us? It's that he embodied the ability to take the worst possible situation and turn it into the best possible thing. That story, for me, is the story of the power of alchemy. To take what the enemy intended as evil and turn it into the greatest good. Now, you may ask a question of yourself or friends, if you got to have a superpower, what would you want it to be? Just want to fly around like Superman? Shoot lasers from your eyes? Be super strong like the Hulk? What would your superpower be? To be invisible, to be able to hear, to be able to know, people's thoughts? What would it be? For me, alchemy. That there's no circumstance that I can't apply choice to turn that lead into gold. There's no situation in which my choice is taken from me. And that's the book, Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl. That's what he said. They can kill you, they can murder you, they can take your possessions, all your accomplishments, they can even rewrite history. Every single thing could be taken, but your superpower is your choice. I can choose how to respond. I can choose how to hold this situation. If you can see Jesus' arms outstretched on the cross, this idea of the opposites. In one hand is this idea. In the other hand is this idea. There's humanity and divinity. There's sin and righteousness. There's so many things you could put into the situation. But if you can see it, maybe you could see an example here, a demonstration of give me the worst possible thing, and I'll turn it into the best possible thing. That's only available when we examine how we choose. And so for today's podcast, where we just went really deep, none of the above. We need to be able to choose our choices better. We need to be able to follow Dietrich Bonhoeffer's quote and be characteristically excellent in all those configurations, self, family, community, all the way up to nation, right? We need to be able to break free from getting stuck. And the way to break free is to start choosing choices. We need to choose our menu so that the choices we have available to us are the empowering ones that we know we've got to be about. That splinter in our mind, what's driving us mad is the idea that is said in the scripture. It was for freedom we were set free. I hope this is setting you free today. I hope this is resonating with you deeply, and I hope it's going to motivate you to open some doors and move forward. So again, thank you for listening. I hope you'll rate and review this. If you liked what you heard today, maybe share it with some other people that you think would benefit. Hey, and don't forget, coming up in January, we're going to dive into these kinds of ideas that will transform, hopefully, your business and your life in 2025. So foundersfire.com, grab your spot. You can click a little button there that just says hold my spot, and it will be yours. And we'll hope to see you there, guys. So thanks again for listening, and go and make it a strategic day.